and now we have our both channels with a slider attached to it, and you can see the values change, but they're changing based upon our WAV file. So we need to align this to actually start when our WAV file does. And I'll show you why, because we're going to say that we're going to use expressions to detect. We're going to set our opacity for everything to 100%, so long as the values for this are at 0, and they are at 0, they're at 0, they're at 0, they're at 0, and then they get here, and they start to change. Great. Now we're going to actually apply the expressions to, do we want to do our particles first? We'll do TutorialClarity. We'll do the TutorialClarity. So effects, shine, and then we're going to go to change the source opacity. Let's just see what that does if we modify it. Nope, that blurs out our letters. We don't want that. We just want the shine opacity. That's what we want, the actual strength of that. So I'm going to set that to 100 by default, and we're going to alt-click the shine opacity. I'm going to pull down this box so you can easily read the expressions. Scroll down a bit. Alright, now what we need to do is let's delete that, we need to grab or pick whip our values. So I'm going to scroll up, scrolling on up, pick whip to our audio amplitude slider, and that way we have our values in here. And I'm going to assign those values to a variable x, so x equals that, and then like such. Excuse me. Now we need to detect the audio levels, because we don't want any effects to happen until we get to the 20th frame, until our audio levels actually come on. So if we actually set this to this and we used it throughout the whole thing, we wouldn't be able to see any light rays at all, because up to the 20th frame it's at 0. The value is 0, or it's really minuscule, like 0.17. So, and we're dealing with, you know, full real integers up to 100. So we're going to actually, I've already done this. All I've done is I picked out the levels. If you come down here and I hit L on my keyboard twice, I've picked out the levels already for when these things peaked, and I've already come to the conclusion that I want to use 0.3 as my real detector. So if it's greater than 0.3, I'm going to multiply this value times 4, and that's going to give me a visible opacity that I can deal with. So I'm going to say if x is greater than 0.3, and open and close brackets, and I'm going to say x times 4, semicolon. And that's pretty much it. But if it's not, it's still going to be using this. So after this line, this could equal, you know, whatever the audio amplitude is. I'm going to type in value, and that's going to give me the default value, which is 100%. So it's going to get the value, and then it's going to revert back to the original value, 100%. And then it's going to go and check to see if x was ever greater than 0.3. And if it was, it's going to multiply that by 4, and that's going to give me the most recent value, and it's going to override the value there, the default value expression. And that's going to give me a, well, this times 4, which is going to be a more visible opacity. So I'm scrolling, it's 100%, it's 100%, and bam, it cuts off. But nope, it's going in and it's changing. You can see it goes to 36, 32, 29.2, all visible opacities. And you can modify those expressions in the math there all you like. I'm actually going to go back, now that I think about it. I'm actually going to go back to, our shine, and I'm going to copy this because we're pretty much going to be using those same values. Okay, now we need to do our particles per second. You're still saying, well, we did our particles, but I don't see any particles. That's because we need them to be triggered specifically by our expressions. So I'm going to go to Particles, Effects, Particular, Emitter, and Particles per second here. I'm going to Alt left click on the stopwatch, hit Control V or right click and hit paste and pull this down, and you'll see there's our previous expression. We still have a value here, call it X. Same thing, it's attached to the slider. Value if greater than 0.3, then go back to this value and assign it times 4. But this is where things are going to change a little bit, because as the parameters change, so do our values here. We're going to take our original value, which was 0, and we would say, I would usually say times x, but if you've ever taken any math in elementary, middle, or high school, you know 0 times a number is always going to be 0. So we need to say value, which is 0, plus 40, And I'm going to say, now these mathematical expressions all depend on the levels of your audio, but that's why I encourage experimentation, times x. So it's going to increase from the value expression is going to get 0, and it's going to add 40 to that, giving us 40 times x, which is going to give us a lot of particles per second once this actually comes on, and you can see there they are. Pretty cool, pretty cool. And that's about it now that I think about it. That is really about it. We have our torpedo, which is that if I hit L here, you can see as our text comes on, that sound plays, and then the stutter whoosh, which is that vibrato style whoosh sound effect, and the particles go across. Now you might be noticing something different. Something different. If you go back to our particles layer and go under the effects, go under motion blur, this is really going to make things a lot better. Just switch it to on. Switch motion blur to on. And we're just going to scroll through here. There we go. And now the particles have motion blur. And that is pretty cool. Now optionally, if you want a fade out effect at a certain time, all you have to do is go to layer, new, adjustment layer. And if you want the whole thing to fade out, maybe, like over a period of 5 seconds, let's hit enter here and let's call this fade out. And an adjustment layer applies settings or effects, whatever effects are applied to it, it applies to everything below it. So if we apply an effect, color correction, levels, and then we come to the end here, and I'm at 2 seconds, 25 frames, pull down our effects, pull down our levels, and set, just left click the stopwatch, we're not applying any expressions. And that's going to create a keyframe right here. Going to drag my timeline down to the end. Got to pull out. Sorry about that. Back to the seconds. I'm going to drag my original start, and let's say I want it to go from, I want the fade out to appear from 12 to 15. It's going to be a relatively slow fade out. Set another keyframe, and we need to set one more keyframe right before it by clicking this add keyframe button. That way it keeps the default values up until that one frame where it hits 12 seconds, and then from 12 seconds to here, we now need to adjust the histogram up here on our left to go completely black by dragging up our whites and our darks there, and that'll give it a more natural fade out effect like such. Pretty cool. Alright guys, let me think. Optionally, I mean, my sound wave ended, that would be how you would do it, but my sound wave really ended about here. So when the sound wave completely stops and the opacity stops, I want it to be completely faded out. Right about, let's get it precise, right about there. So with that, guys, my name is Graham with TutorialClarity. This has been a relatively quick tutorial, but it got you introduced, further introduced, into animation and applying that with sound. We used our stutter whoosh and we converted that to audio keyframes, and we used those values on the slider. We use those values to, we use them in our expressions, and we had tied those expressions to various effects, which you can really go crazy with. There's so many effects, it's insane. But with that, guys, my name is Graham with TutorialClarity. Take care.